Hey everybody, Mark Petroni with you on the Peel Weekly News. Welcome to another video. I wanted to chat a little bit about the column this week, something that I've been pondering recently and which kind of crystallized in my mind a little bit following the recent debate. As you know, we're in the midst of an election campaign here in Ontario, and one of the key winners out of that debate, I think, besides Ford, who knew, of course, that he was going to get attacked repeatedly by both Wynne and Horwath because he's the perceived front runner, and he is the front runner. He's seen as the man to beat, and so he came under fire for much of the evening. So that was not unexpected. What has emerged as an interesting trend out of that, of course, is what's happened with the NDP and the Liberals, because the vote, as far as the Liberals is concerned, is beginning to, for lack of a better word, collapse. She may very well be running in the teens right now, at least according to some polls, while Andrea Horwath has emerged as a solid number two, perhaps as high as 30% right now in terms of her support. I don't think it's that high, but if you believe some of the pollsters right now, that's where she is. So what's going on here? Well, I think it's part of a trend. And I'm not just talking about strategic voting here. I'm talking about what I believe to be is a longer term trend having to do with the polarization of voting along kind of ideological lines. And the reason why I say it's not just about strategic voting, it's happening in between elections. It's happening, for instance, federally with the Trudeau government, I mean specifically Justin Trudeau and maybe his inner circle, moving the party left in terms of its approach to governing. I'm talking about pushing for higher taxes, pushing for global redistribution of wealth, meaning taking our wealth and moving it outside the country, but just radical redistribution of the wealth of this country. So I see that as a trend that has emerged nationally, right across the country. And conversely, you're seeing conservatives emerge like Doug Ford, like Jason Kenney. And these are unapologetic conservatives. These are men who are unafraid to talk about the benefits of lower taxes, to talk about the benefits of freer markets, to talk about the benefits of less regulation, not more, which is what you're being fed by the left, specifically the Trudeau government, the Wynne government, the Rachel Notley government in Alberta. They're all wanting more regulation. You know, they can't get enough government. But you're having, on the other side now, people like Ford, like Kenney, who are saying, wait a minute, there are solid benefits to freer markets, to less regulation. There are economic benefits that will accrue to all Canadians as a result of that. So what are we seeing here? What's happening? Well, I think we're moving slowly but surely towards more of a two-party system in this country. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the two parties might necessarily be the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party. Because in Alberta, for instance, where much of the left-wing support has gravitated towards the NDP in recent years, mainly because Rachel Notley won the last Alberta election. I mean, support for the Liberal Party provincially, and I'm talking about the provincial Liberal Party, has basically tanked. It's almost non-existent because people who used to vote Liberal in Alberta in provincial elections are now gravitated towards the NDP. So anybody with left-wing views in Alberta is going to gravitate towards the NDP. Anybody with conservative views is going to gravitate towards the new United Party under Jason Kenney. The Wild Rose Party is gone. The old Alberta PC Party is gone. They have united under the United Conservative Party of Alberta. So there is another example where in the midst of, between elections, we're seeing a move towards a polarization of voting in Alberta. And we've already seen that going back decades in Saskatchewan, so there it's nothing new. You've got your NDP and your quote-unquote conservative party. They call themselves the Saskatchewan Party, but that's basically who they are. They are the conservative wing of Saskatchewan's political world right now. BC, you've had a polarized environment for many years as well between the Liberal Party and the NDP. And now I think we're moving in that direction in Ontario. No, I don't think it's just a temporary trend. I think as you're seeing people abandon Kathleen Wynne as a toxic person, as a toxic candidate, as somebody who doesn't have a chance of being elected, I think over time, especially if Ford wins big time, I think you're going to see a coalescing of left-wing support under either the NDP or some kind of united party representing the left in Ontario. I think what's happening is that the center, what has really been in past decades and past years, kind of the position of strength for a lot of parties. You want to be in the center because then you can say, well, you're the moderate, you're the one who's looking at both sides of the issue, you're the one who's able to go back and forth between conservative views and maybe more socialist views, if you will, depending on what the circumstances are. And those circumstances might be economic, they might be political, they might be social, but it's always the party in the center that gets to kind of swing both ways, as it were. Well, I think we're moving away from that. And I think it's a reflection in part of what's happened in the United States with the U.S., with the Democratic Party there, which was always, the kind of the working person's party, right? A lot of the hard hat jobs, people who held those positions gravitated towards the Democrat Party, the union supporters and so forth. And that all began to change relatively recently when the Democratic Party left those people and gravitated towards kind of an elitist view of the world, dominated by the donor class, dominated by Silicon Valley, dominated by Hollywood, just the overall creative industry. And then you've got your power corridors in Washington, D.C., New York, on the Eastern Seaboard. That's your Democrat Party right now. And a lot of those other people who used to vote Democrat, well, guess what? They moved towards, at least temporarily under Donald Trump, into the Republican camp. That's why Donald Trump won. That's why he won states like Michigan, states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and so forth. So it may be a global kind of a trend that we're looking at, slowly but surely, a polarization. And what it's going to mean if you're a typical Canadian who has kind of gone back and forth between, say, Liberal, Tory, even NDP on occasion, if you're one of those people that has kind of bounced around a little bit, depending on who was running and depending on what their positions were and what your feelings about those candidates were, well, now you're seeing the polarization take hold, which means that those people who traditionally were swing voters, bouncing back and forth, who consider themselves maybe independents, if you want to call them that, it's a term that is more in use in the United States. But if you were, say, not unaligned with any particular political party, just kind of went with the flow, see what was going on. If you were in the center politically, It might mean that you might be forced to choose between parties that are more ideological and rigid in terms of their views. Either they're conservative or they are left-wing, like socialist style. And it's going to force Canadians to make a decision. It's going to force Canadians to say, here's where I am. And I make the argument that however those Canadians go in terms of their votes is the way the country is going to go. In other words, whatever they decide to do relative to their positions on the political parties, we're either going to become a freer, a wealthier, a more independent country, or we're going to become one that in which the elites control more and more of how the country is run and have more of the wealth, in my opinion. That's it for me this week. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.